Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is the United Kingdom News and Culture. This show is all about celebrating the partnership and all of the wonderful history that we have with the United Kingdom and the United States of America. Our hearts go out to people all over the world who are suffering, and we are so sorry for all of the loss and the atrocities taking place in the world. Joining me today is DIANN who is the star of our show, and she is killing it with her new book. I shouldn't even say new because it's not boomers, not as new as some of the others. Let's welcome her to the platform. Hi, DIANN.
Hi, Dr. Jacalyn. Thank you for saying those kind words for the world. We certainly need that. And thank you for the compliment for Boomer. Yeah, I received 2 more great reviews today, so I'm very excited.
Very excited for you as well. And I know there's more that you've already put out there, Rise, and I think there's something else. What other projects are you working on?
So November the 15th, Ruby Takes Chicago hits the stand. So I'm very excited, and you can pre-order that one right now. And it's the continuation of Rise, Ruby's journey to be able to be educated. So a different world in 1904 for women.
Well, we look forward to having you on the Corner Bookstore since it's your show, and you can tell.
So, thank you.
And we're super excited to have our expert correspondents who take their time and their expertise and bring it here each and every week. We really do thank you. HELENA, CHARD, and Simon MacDonald, come on out.
Hello.
Hello.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you both. And
HELENA from London.
HELENA from London, and Simon?
From a very, very soggy and landslipped Scotland. It's been on Friday there. I mean, the county I live in became cut off from the outside world. Lots of landslips. One of the main roads now has finally opened today, and they're hoping it's going to stay that way. But our road from here up to Oban, I don't see that reopening again for the next couple of months, probably by the time they clear it and pick up the hillside and put it back again. Yeah, lots of flooding, lots of damage, but there we go. Life goes on. Yeah, so
how is that impacting you and your family?
It just, well, we didn't have to mop out the house, shall we say. My dog Isla, she was looking very worried out of the window, thinking, "Oh dear, I'm going to get my paws wet." She's a bit precocious, and this is being a gun dog that's supposed to love water and mud and so on. But no, she shies off a bit about that. But our river that went past, that goes through the side of the village, burst its banks, and instead of being the usual 4 meters or 4 yards wide, finished up about 400 meters wide and nearly 1.5 miles long. It actually made a very impressive looking loch, but it was pretty bad here, and but we're getting back to normal. You don't let these things bother you. Now in this day and age, we've got this thing here in front of my face, this computer with internet access, and there we are. So yeah, we're still here.
We're still connected.
That's great. But were any of the shepherds able to save the sheep that were being inundated by the water?
Yeah, we lost the local farmer here lost a few sheep, and it was very sad sight seeing them getting washed away. But the cattle were okay, and the horses in the village, they're all right as well. But it was just we lost some sheep, and that was it. It's always sad to see livestock go like that.
Yeah.
The river was actually sort of floating with logs and all the sorts of debris. You couldn't imagine what was floating down that river for quite a few days. But life's back to normal again. We just dust yourself down. Well, there wasn't any dust to dust down, but you just rinse yourself down and dry
yourself off.
Yes.
all over again. So
we're glad that you're able to be here with us today. Thank you. And I also want to thank DIANN and Helena for being part of World Jenny's Day, which we just finished broadcasting yesterday. And Helena went to the gala last night. Tell us about that.
I did. It was in a wonderful hotel in South Kensington, and it was good fun. I think the people there were full of love, and there were artists there that performed throughout the evening. There was a 3-course meal, and the finale was nobody knew, but it was an Elvis actor that came on and was dancing and singing, and it sort of finished it off well. I mean, the whole idea was to try and raise money as well for World Jenny's Day, and yeah, it was good fun. I wasn't expected to be in the country, but it was a last minute decision to rush off, and I'm glad that I got to witness it. And I think it's something that Janetta Barry, the founder, wishes to continue, hopefully, tweaking it. I think you learn, I think, along the way, if you're doing something big, how to change things. So I think there's been a learning curve for her. But anyway, it was good fun. Thank you for asking. I wish you all could have been there. I wish you could have been there, Jacalyn. After all your efforts and your wonderful platform, which was perfect for obviously what she's trying to achieve. It seemed a shame, but there you are.
Yeah,
it was interesting. Sorry. It was interesting because from a production standpoint, knowing the limitations of the various platforms, for example, YouTube, they're all over copyright infringement. So I knew from before that we were not going to be streaming on YouTube because we can't take a chance of having the channel shut down. But on Facebook, there's an 8-hour limit. So we broke the time slots down so that we started 4 different times with different links, and around 10 a.m. Facebook shut us down. So we were not on Facebook. I couldn't, the rest of our shows that were unrelated, we couldn't be on any of the Facebook channels as well. So I was dealing with StreamYard and Facebook behind the scenes, trying to get it resolved. I even tried for my phone. So there's always things to learn, and it's a learning curve. But I think overall, there were a number of really talented performers. That's Victoria George Veal. Right? She was amazing. Her voice, incredible. And you introduced us to her, Helena.
She's so wonderful, isn't she? I actually just clicked in, but I just missed her singing. But I heard you praising her, and I thought I must catch up on it. So I'll listen. She's a great performer, I think, in general. So I can well imagine she's got a fabulous voice.
She really does. Many talented people. But I know we've got some news that you're going to share with us. We'll start with Helena, and then we'll go over to Simon.
Thank you. So I'm actually going to start off with Amanda Wakely. So it's a bit of a fashion slant. I didn't speak with her directly, but I have worked with her 10 years plus ago on a couple of her fashion shows. And I've been listening and studying outfits that she's been making and has been making. She's a very successful fashion designer here in the UK, and she mainly dresses women, and she wants people to feel, empowered but comfortable. And she's really great, but interesting because I didn't realise that she worked so much with the royals. Namely, I know the Princess of Wales that she's dressed. I think even Meghan Markle she's dressed. And she used to provide outfits for Princess Diana. So it was wonderful. I was just listening to her talking about her experiences. And I was feeling really blessed as well, because I've got some lovely photographs taken from her fashion shows, which I'll dig out and introduce to everyone shortly. Not today though. And she was talking about how she just found Princess Diana so kooky, really good fun. When she first met her, she thought there'd be loads of sniffer dogs and there's a security turning up with her, but she just literally jumped out her car, knocked on the door, and there she was, joking, cheeky, informal, gossipy, but very encouraging as well. But the reason I bring this up is that here in the UK, it's a huge industry. Fashion's a huge industry everywhere. I think it's something like 28 billion, or is it 2.8? 28 billion, I think it is, a year. So obviously really good. And the royal family are obviously a wonderful soft power, the whole royal family. So with reference to, if you put it in each section, fashion obviously is huge, and the Princess of Wales is obviously a phenomenal model, really. She's got a model-esque body, so for fashion designers to show off their range of clothing is always a plus. But I was interested to see and read up about, do you remember Princess Diana's black sheep jumper? It was very well known. There were lots of sheep, little red sheep, and then a tiny black sheep in the middle. And this went for auction at Sotheby's in New York, and it went for, I think it was something like 1.2 million or something like. This is for a jumper. Now, this jumper was designed by Sally Muir, I think, and Joanna Osborne, and they were a very, very tiny company. This is how, media and obviously soft power royals, it does lots of businesses, a lot of good, but it's a tiny, tiny business they have. And they obviously designed, so it's Sally and Joanna. It's a Warm and Wonderful, that's the name of the company. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Their business catapulted just by Diana. Obviously, she was seen wearing it just one time, and all of a sudden everyone wanted this jumper. We have a picture of the jumper. There it is, very simple, but obviously a lot of meaning behind it. Now, this is Princess Diana. She was wearing this first in 1981, and this is actually taken from Princess Diana's archives, and 1981, and then she always wore it at the polo matches when the now King Charles was playing. So that's the first time. Second time in 1983 she also wore it, but it had a lot more meaning in those times, black sheep, and it's gone to auction. The business absolutely catapulted, huge. They were so thankful for the media talking about it, writing about it, and now they're doing incredibly well. So I just think it's lovely to hear those good news stories. And also, I'm really excited personally to hear about Amanda Wakely and how well she's doing, how she empowers women, but also to sort of be part of that story without even realising that she's made so much for the royals. Yes, it tickled me. But I just think it's a really lovely, lovely jumper. And I think more recently, obviously we spoke about World Jenny's Day, but independently, actually yesterday was marked World Mental Health Day 2023. And it was an opportunity for everyone, all people, all communities, to unite behind the theme of mental health is a universal human right. So, so many people were doing things. Obviously, we were doing World Jenny's Day. Kate and the Prince and Princess of Wales, and in fact Harry and Meghan as well marked World Mental Health Day sort of on separate sides, opposite sides of the world. I don't know if you've seen it. So they were in Harry and Meghan New York City, and Prince and Princess of Wales at the Factory Works in Birmingham. And I have to say, the Princess of Wales looking beautiful as usual, wearing this bright yellow jacket, which obviously joy and feeling well is sort of indicated. But also the Prince and Princess of Wales, they took part in a talk with 100 18 to 24-year-olds, and it was called Exploring Our Emotions, Exploring Our Emotional World. So it was understanding, managing all emotions to boost resilience and build positive relationships. Because I have to say, I would say that majority of things that go wrong, when you wind back, a lot of it is down to this managing emotions and boosting resilience. So that's obviously, we're here more. This is going, I know the Prince and Princess of Wales, they're working on a project now for a few days. So it's just the beginning that I've spoken about. So that's them. We spoke last week about the National Portrait Gallery, and I spoke about some paintings to do with Windrush. Anyway, I actually decided to pop in because I had a meeting not too far. So I did rush to the National Portrait Gallery, and wow, again, I would say if anyone has the chance to pop in, it's free. It's been in June, it reopened because it had been shut for a while, and it is absolutely the amount of work that has gone into it. And also it was absolutely immaculately clean and bright, which I love. And you go in, and it sort of, it explains as well when you go in how they've rehung everything, and it tells the story of the UK through portraits from the Tudors to today. And it starts from the top, is the oldest, and you work your way down to sort of all the modern section. And it's a gallery of people. Well, actually, it's a gallery of inspiring people, I'd say, for people, and it's a real lovely place for everyone to enjoy. So I visited the Foyle Gallery, and we discussed, it's the 75th anniversary of the arrival of HMT Empire Windrush. I decided to have a look at the pictures and really go in closely to have a look, sort of see what I thought. Some I didn't think were as good as I'd hoped, but some were really lovely. I took a little clip, if you want to show that, Jacalyn. It's a very simple clip because you really can't spend too long zooming in, but I just sort of zoomed around the Foyles Gallery, and it shows a few more of the pictures, and it really does tell a story. So I don't know whether we've got that we can show. There I was in the gallery, and did you notice the portrait of Edna Henry that we spoke about last week?
Yes.
Do you remember, in the pink jumper?
Yes.
And that was painted by Amy Sherald. Actually, that was oil on linen. I hadn't realised. So that was quite interesting. And there was, obviously it was a quick spin round, but there was a lovely one that I think the most realistic to me, it was a beautiful portrait, just a facial portrait of a gentleman called Alfred Gardner. And it was painted by, I mean, some of these artists are phenomenal, and they're so young. Either that or I'm just getting too old, I don't know, but painted by Chloe Fox, and that was on oil. And she was 1997, so how old does that make her? 97, 2007, 20 something. Anyway, yeah, very, very good, fantastic. I love art, and as I say again, the National Portrait Gallery, wow, definitely a place to see. And I mean, the works of art, the older works of art, the intricate paintings, which are huge. I mean, you know, almost like gallery-sized walls, full of people, lots of people, just their faces, all the expressions. I mean, artists are incredible. I mean, really, really outstanding. So I enjoyed that, and I thought I'd show you. There's a lot more, in fact, to show, again, from the gallery. And we have some other things. I mean, there's lots of auctions going on, and I know that the Prince and Princess of Wales as well, they had a date night, and in fact they went to an auction. This was a completely different auction, and I think in a way it's almost quite romantic. It's like, where do you go that's not food and cinema and various things. I think to go to an auction is really quite good fun, and to look through all the locks, and it's quite exciting. It makes me want to venture out. But there are some new photographs that have been found. And there's, I think, something like 10 photographs, and it's of naughty King Edward VIII. And the reason I say naughty King Edward VIII, he obviously wasn't king for too long, and caused a huge amount of controversy and problems for the royal family. And we have a photograph that would be good to show. This is of King Edward when he was a lot younger. And I think his mistress, I think he looks quite a lot like Prince Harry. I don't know if anyone can see it, but to me, there's something there. So he's a youthful man, I think taken by his mistress at the time. But this series of photographs are actually at this moment being sold in auction at Chiswick auctions, and they are unseen. And it would be interesting to know how much the lot goes for. I just think it's always lovely to find pictures, never been seen photographs. It's all part of history. But
Helena,
I think really lovely.
Is that 1919 on there? Its signature, and then
yes, I believe it is. I think so. That's what I saw, 1919. But obviously, I feel sorry because obviously his brother then became King George VI. And obviously he wasn't made to be king in a way, and didn't want to be king. But there you go, that's history for you. But I love seeing things that have been sold in auction, so it'd be interesting to know. Having seen that, obviously the black sheep jumper went for so much, although photographs I don't think go for so much money, but it's more the historical value. And I think I've got lots of stories, but I think let's do a cheeky story, which is something, I always love it when it's to do with children. And there's a book called The King's Pants. I don't know whether you've heard about it. And it's for the king can't rule without his royal pants, basically. And there was something called the Queen's Pants as well. And basically a primary school class in Shropshire, they got some plain pants and they painted them very brightly, and they sent them all to King Charles. And this is for the coronation. This is to make their mark and to cheers and to help. There we are. That's the book. And this is written by Nicholas Allen, previously called The Queen's Knickers, sorry, not pants. Painted in bold colours, sent them off. And they were absolutely jumping for joy because they got a reply, and on receiving their letter from the king and the queen, they were so excited. It's very clever, isn't it, as well, because children obviously buy into the royal family too. It sounds a bit commercial me saying that, but they will obviously be royalists, and I love that story. And there's different ones. There's ones like the king and his organic pants, and his emerald green pants and all his boxer shorts. So there's different stories to do with it, but I think it's funny, isn't it? It's just simple, but just I can imagine the children all jumping up and down, excited. So there we are. So that's my final story, I think, although I have a few snippets. I think we can end there because I know that Simon has some exciting stories and news and history, should I say, to share with us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Helena. That was really fascinating. I love the diversity of what you shared today.
Yeah, I think it's just simple. Sometimes these simple ones are good fun. There's an awful lot of news, as we know, and thank you for sharing that to begin with, that's going on. And it puts everyone in this black sort of hole. But again, it's this, we have to share love. We really have to. It's so important, and keep positive and inspired. It's that can-do approach, because it's very easy, isn't it, to let things slip.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I know Simon's got some really exciting and interesting news that he's going to be teaching us.
Oh, you're making me sound like the old schoolmaster now. Oh dear, here we go. Anyway, well, I mean, last week and the week before, I was going through Scottish inventions and discoveries that changed the world. One thing which actually I missed out on that, and that was about whiskey, our sort of national drink, I suppose. So today I'm going to give you a bottle-sized story of the whiskey history. So whiskey, it's believed to be distilled almost 200 years ago and sipped by young Queen Victoria. And this is a collection of bottles intact that's been found behind a cellar door in Blair Athol Castle up in the Scottish Highlands. And I've been to Blair Castle, magnificent, beautiful place. It is understood to be the oldest known Scotch whisky in existence still, and it is actually still drinkable, believe it or not. And it's going to be offered for sale at auction. So in the late 2022, Bertie Troughton, who was resident trustee at Blair Castle in Perthshire, found a number of old bottles in an unassuming cellar room. And around 40 bottles of whiskey, in fact, were discovered at the back of a shelf, which are believed to have been distilled in 1833, bottled in 1841. The whiskey was then actually rebottled in 1932. In November, 24 bottles to be sold via the Perth-based company Whiskey Auctioneer. And that's the global market leader in the buying and selling of whiskey and spirits at auction. Bottles were initially sampled by the family, lucky folk, and a local whiskey expert before Whiskey Auctioneer was contacted. Since then, research in the archives at Blair Castle and Athol Estates, alongside authentication of the whiskey by the Scottish University's Environmental Research Centre via carbon dating, supports its early 19th century origin. So when was whiskey first distilled in Scotland? Whiskey, it's been distilled in Scotland for more than 500 years. As King Henry VII was dissolving monasteries in Scotland, it's thought that he forced monks to begin whiskey distillation in farms, and the practice rapidly spread from there. But it's never actually been proved that the Highland farmers didn't themselves discover how to distill the spirits from surplus barley crops that they had. But the oldest reference to whiskey occurs in Scottish Exchequer rolls for 1494, where there's an entry of 8 balls of malt to Friar John Corr, wherewith to make aqua vitae. This would actually be enough grain to make around 1,500 bottles, which suggests that the distillation was actually well established by the late 15th century. Now, a ball is a Scots word. It's used to describe a unit equivalent to 6 bushels, with each bushel weighing around 25.4 kilograms or 56 pounds in that weight. So 5 centuries later, in 1994, the industry behind the Scotch whisky celebrated the 500th anniversary of the beverages production in Scotland. And in that year, global exports of Scotch whisky surpassed £2 billion, which is about $2.3 billion. So, and I was trying to convert it into rand because I know there are people in South Africa watching today. So you've got to multiply that by 20 to find out in South African currency what it is. So where does whiskey come from? It's been over 1,000 years since distillation spread to Scotland and Ireland as travelling monks migrated there from mainland Europe. While Europe was distilling products like wine, the Irish and the Scots, living in a climate which is not really conducive to grape cultivation, especially last week, turned to fermenting grains. And to pinpoint whiskey's origins, we actually have to start with its progenitor, distillation. And the practice of distillation is said to date back as early as 2000 BC, when people in regions such as Mesopotamia used it to produce strong aromatics and perfumes. So the first written record of the process is linked to the 1st century AD, where the first accounts of distillation come from the Greeks and describe how distillation was used to turn seawater into potable drinking water. And so we wonder what's whiskey actually mean? The derivative of it, the name whiskey, is said to originate from uisce ve, which means water of life in the Scottish Gaelic, with uisce simply meaning water and ve meaning life. And ve is actually spelled Beatha, Gaelic was a spoken language and not a written language. So later the spelling came in with various different versions. And Scots Gaelic is a Celtic language, and it was introduced to the nation by way of Ireland. And the Highlands and Islands of Scotland is actually still spoken today, and is deep through quite a revival. Anybody coming to Scotland notices on the road signs that they're in English and in the Gaelic as well, just to confuse the motorist. So as Scotland gradually became more anglicised over time, the phrase was shortened to uisce, to whiskey. And if you think of it, the word uisce, whiskey, uisce, whiskey, uisce, whiskey, it all binds into one. So as for the drink itself, whiskey, it's a distilled spirit made from fermented grain, typically matured in wooden casks, usually oak, for some period of time. And what separates whiskey from Scotch? In short, it refers to a special type of whiskey, but the one that qualifies as Scotch is made in Scotland, and Scotch must be by law distilled and matured in Scotland in oak casks for at least 3 years and bottled at a minimum alcoholic strength of 40% ABV. That's alcohol by volume. So it's powerful stuff. And the first known reference for a still making aquavitae, which is water of life, in Scotland, appears in Aberdeen Council registers in a case heard in 1505 by the town's bailies concerning the inheritance of goods belonging to a chaplain called Sir Andrew Gray, who died in 1504. That amongst his goods was recorded in the Middle Scots language, in stellatur for aquavitae and rosewater, which, translate that one if you can. So spirit production it was first taxed by the Scottish Parliament of January 1644 with an excise duty of 2 shillings and 8pence, which is 13 pence or about 17 cents US, which was imposed per pint, and instigating the illicit distilling of spirits within the country. So between the 1760s and the 1830s, a substantial unlicensed trade originated from the Highlands, forming a significant part of the region's export economy. And in 1782, more than 1,000 illegal stills were actually seized in the Highlands alone. These could only have been a fraction of those actually in operation, because they're a pretty crafty lot up there in the Highlands. We want to hide something, we can hide it. The lowland distillers, who had no opportunity to avoid taxation, of course, complained that untaxed Highland whiskey made up more than half the market, and the heavy taxation during the Napoleonic Wars gave the illicit trade a huge advantage. Highland magistrates themselves, who were members of the landowning classes, had a pretty lenient attitude to the unlicensed distillers, because all of whom would be tenants in the local area, so they understood that the trade supported the rents paid, and imprisoned tenants wouldn't be able to pay any rent, so they let them off pretty lightly. In 1823, Parliament raised restrictions on licensed distilleries, eased restrictions on licensed distilleries with the Excise Act, while at the same time making it harder for illegal stills to operate. These changes ushered in the modern era of Scotch production, and in 1823, 2,230,000 gallons of whiskey had duty paid on it. And then in 1824, this increased to 4,350,000 gallons. That is a lot of whiskey. And farmer George Smith, working under the landlord, the Duke of Gordon, was the first person in Scotland to take out a license for a distillery under the new act, founding the Glenlivet distillery in 1824 to make a single malt Scotch. Some of the distilleries which started legal operations in the next few years included Bowmore on the island of Islay, which is not far from here, then Strathisla, Balblair and Glenmorangie, and all of these actually still remain in business today and absolutely thriving. So by the 1890s, almost 40 new distilleries had opened in Scotland, and the boom years continued until the industry was significantly affected by World War I and later by the Great Depression. Many of the companies closed and never reopened, sadly. But during the 1970s, there was a boom in Scotch whisky production that led to overproduction. And in the early 80s, and starting in 1981, whisky distilleries slashed production by a third and kept it low for about a decade. During that time, 20 distilleries sadly closed. And since the 2010s, Scotch whisky has entered a new phase of growth with new distilleries like Ardnahoe and Borders opening, and older distilleries like Brora and Portellen, again on Islay, and Rosebank reopened. So some whisky dates to recall on: 1494, the earliest documented recording of distilling in Scotland. An entry in the Exchequer Rolls, as stated before, lists 8 balls of malt to Friar John Core, wherewith to make aquavitae, enough to make 1,500 bottles. In 1644, the first official taxes on Scotch whisky production are imposed, causing a rise in illicit whisky distilling right across Scotland. 1785, Scotland's poet Robert Burns writes a poem, Scotch Drink, which includes the line, "O thou, my muse, good old Scotch drink." Then 1823, the Excise Act is passed and illicit stills and smuggling of Scotch began to fall away. In their place, legal and licensed distilleries flourished, reaching a peak of over 300 in the years shortly after its enactment. 1831, Aeneas Coffey invents the patent still, which is used as today. Now, this led to the production of a lighter flavoured grain whisky, which when blended with the more fiery malts, extended the appeal of Scotch whisky globally. In 1880, the Phylloxera beetle devastated the French vineyards, and Scots were pretty quick to take advantage of that, and Scotch whisky replaced brandy as the spirit of choice. In many regions of France, Scotch whisky is the preferred spirit over brandy, and that applies today. 1912, the Wine and Spirit Brand Association is formed and became the Whisky Association in 1917. And then 1942 evolved again, became SWA as it's known today. 1920, Prohibition begins in the United States of America, and the federal government made an exemption for whiskey prescribed by a doctor for medicinal purposes. I think half the United States suddenly became ill then, and so they all got their scripts. 1933, the first statutory definition of Scotch whisky. 1939, World War II reshaped the industry's history. One cabinet minister said, "The country needs food. Dollars means food, and whiskey means dollars." Annual export targets were agreed, and the producers increasingly looked to overseas markets. So in 1994, 500th anniversary of whisky production in Scotland, exports of Scotch whisky reached 2 billion for the first time in history. 2009, the Scotch whisky regulations come into force, and the rules set out how Scotch whisky must be produced, labelled, packaged, and advertised, helping to protect the reputation of Scotch whisky. 2018, Scotch whisky is the world's undisputed premier whisky, with 39 bottles of Scotch whisky are shipped from Scotland every second to nearly 200 markets around the globe. And in 2023, well, at least 46 bottles of Scotch whisky are shipped from Scotland every second, with Japan having the highest consumption of whisky per head of capita. So everyone, cheers. Or as we say here, sláinte.
Oh,
Well done. That was excellent. And by the way, we have the photograph.
Ah, there we are. That's
Oh.
the bottles that were found, and as I say, it's still drinkable today. As was proved. I mean, because they couldn't resist it, they had to open one of them and just find out. Just wish I'd been there. But anyway, these bottles going out for auction. There's all sorts of guesstimates as to what they might fetch, and it's sort of regarded anything up to maybe £350,000 per bottle, which is what, 400,000 US dollars. Yeah, that's a lot of money, which is that's 8 million South African rand at a guess, or 8.5 million South African rand. So yeah, a lot of money for a bottle, and there's quite a few of them there.
And they're all full, right? Or you don't know?
Thirsty work, that. Yeah.
Better get started soon.
So there we are. So there is the bottled history of our Scottish whisky industry.
And what brand is that?
That's Lefroig. Lefroig Select, and Lefroig is it's made on the island of Islay, And in this one, you can actually you can taste the sea almost, and it's got quite a smoky overtone to it, and it's the way that they're turning the barley to malt it and germinate it in the process, and it's done in a loft with gaps along the floor, and they've got peat fires burning down below, which creates the smoke that comes up. So it's actually the germinated barley is smoked, and then it goes on for the distillation process. And that's a tale for another day, I think.
Well, this was a very interesting, educational and informative show. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I've had so much fun in researching into it as well. A certain amount of tasting had to take place, obviously.
The good thing we don't have
science.
It's a good thing this airtime isn't the first thing in the morning there in the UK. That might be a problem.
Well, there we are. I mean, if I'd been in the 1920s in America, I could always have sort of feigned that I was feeling really ill and gone along to the doctor to have it prescribed. It's the only way you could get alcohol in America then, legally.
A shot of whiskey for everything. That's what I used to hear.
Right. And to learn about the fashion, Helena, you said it was called Warmest. Was that right?
Yeah.
Helena, yeah, Warmth and Warmth. And to the way they grew, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you're right. How fun to go to an auction. I should think about that too and tell my husband. I haven't had a romantic idea. Thank you.
Yes, I love going to auctions, and they're really exciting places. And I remember one auction I went up to in the Highlands, and it was there were some very nice pieces coming up. One which actually caught my eye, and a couple of friends with me there, a chap with his wife, and anyway, she'd gone off to the kitchens to get some coffee for everyone. It was a very cold auction house we were in. And so my friend asked her, he spotted this item coming out. So he stood there, he started bidding. And the prices kept going up and up and up and so on. She says, this is really getting beyond the pale. So it's getting a bit beyond my limit almost. But he said, I'll have one more bid. Put his hand up. And he got it. Way over the odds. Anyway, his wife came back later with the coffee, and and so then we had a sip and so on. She said, says that item you'd noticed there earlier on, it came up. I was bidding for it and trying to get it. I'm really sorry I didn't get it because it just kept going up and up and up and so on. So his wife had actually been bidding against himself.
What a story.
I'm not sure that they're still together.
And they're still together.
That he's seriously overpaid. So, it's one of these things in an auction room, beware. Make sure that those who are in on the deals with you are standing right beside you when the lot comes up. Otherwise.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Oh, DIANN, just to say that the shop, they were called Warm and Wonderful. That's
Warm and Wonderful. Okay, good. I'm going to look them up. So, and I hope our listeners look them up as well. So thank you. And to see the museum and that screen slide or video, I should say, that was so wonderful. I wanted to stop and learn about every single person because they had to have a story to have been painted. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, don't got my portrait in there yet. Why not?
There's still time.
There's time, yes.
Well, speaking of time, we're out of time because our next show is coming up, Global Social Entrepreneurs. And I just want to say thank you to everyone. We have over 1,018,000 views as of last night. So I'm super excited about that. And a big thanks goes out to everybody here, as well as the rest of our team, our sponsors, our guests, and our loyal fans like GAFA. So thank you again for being here and joining us. All right, let's go around. DIANN, final words from you for today.
I think where we are in the world today, I want everyone to make a point to have a good day, which means also that even if you get upset, just have a little self-control and bring love and peace back into your heart.
Thanks, DIANN. How can people get in touch with you?
My website's the easiest, DIANNFLOYDBOEHM, BOEHM, for those who don't know, the BOEHM.com, DIANNFLOYDBOEHM.com. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you, Diane. We'll be closing out with your sponsorship as well. Simon, what is your final message for the day and how can people reach you?
Well, I've got to, I'm actually going to do a couple today because the one really pertains to what I've done the last couple of weeks about the Scottish inventions and discoveries and so on. So an inventor, simply a fellow who doesn't take his education too seriously. I know a few inventors and it fits the bill perfectly. But looking at today with portraits and the talent that these artists have, it's quite amazing. So he says, when your work speaks for itself, don't interrupt.
All right. And how can we get in touch with you, everybody out there watching?
Yeah, it has to be a carrier pigeon just now that's got good strong wings to get the landslips and the carnage that's been on our roads and in our Argyll and Bute district of Scotland. But you would always try Simon-MacDonald at Simon-MacDonald.com for the website, or macdonaldsimon@ymail.com for the email. But carrier pigeon probably works best just now.
Get out the carrier pigeon, viewers. That's great. We also have a comment from somebody watching on your LinkedIn. Billy Smith, I wish I knew you were so fond of whiskey, Simon, that time we went for a coffee.
Cheers, Billy.
Great comment. Thank you. And Helena, how about you? Last words for the day, and how can people get in touch with you?
I think my words are, with everything going on, that we really should celebrate everyone, celebrate the contribution of different communities and what people bring to everybody. Just share, connect, celebrate, and inclusion for all, really. And it's probably best people contact me on hcpresenter@gmail.com, a simple email address, because then I will make sure it's ticked off. Thank you.
Thank you, Helena. Thanks so much. Okay, please do join us for our next show. As I mentioned, it's Global Social Entrepreneurs starring Anne Scotland. And every one of her shows has amazing guests who are doing work not only as business owners and entrepreneurs, but they're doing it in a completely different way to give back to the world. So if you haven't seen the show, it is definitely worthwhile watching. All right, thanks, everyone. We're going to hear from our dear friend, who would that be? Dianne Floyd Boehm. And then we'll be signing off. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Hello, I'm children's author Dianne Floyd Boehm, and I am co-host for several of the USA Global TV and radio shows. I joined because of the purpose of the USA Global TV and radio. They provide content for the viewers and listeners, an opportunity for people around the world to have their own show or even be a guest on an existing show. We truly believe in helping others get their positive message out to the world. We also have the opportunity for the listeners. You can watch on several platforms, and on YouTube, you can ask questions and even give a comment. We absolutely love it. I love being part of the USA Global TV and radio because I love positive messages, and who doesn't? And we need more of that in the world. We are a family, and we hope you will join us and become part of the family too.